I was 19 when I met him. He's from Chicago, Illinois, but he was living in Fort Wayne, Indiana at the time. So he got in a little legal issue carrying. And so I decided that I wanted to keep his things while he went away for 9 months to a work release program, which is technically jail, but they give you an opportunity to work still. And that's what he was doing. And I basically kept his apartment and his car. We were together, so, I was still paying, his bills, making sure that he didn't lose anything. We were working at the same place, building furniture. I just didn't want to be embarrassed and move back home after I made that decision to leave. It was a new relationship. We went to Vegas the next week after Atlanta. In Vegas, he got really, 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 and he hit me in the back of my head with a cranberry juice bottle. That's when the violence started. That was the very first time. Instead of me telling the cops that it was him, I lied and said he didn't touch me. And he told them that I hit him. I was at the Venetian Hotel, so they could have ran the cameras back. But the reason why I lied for him is because he was technically not supposed to leave the state if he was out on bond for the charges. I went to jail for domestic battery in Las Vegas, and I had to stay in jail for 25 hours because I chose to lie for him, basically. Since he was so, I was trying to explain to them that he already had an OWI pending. That was his third offense. So that's why he ended up getting time for that, for the OWI, because he's a repeat offender. The cop didn't want to hear nothing I had to say after I told them a lie, pretty much. In Vegas, they do not favor women because women do a lot of, and so they treated me like that when I was in jail. Like I was they treated me like that. They was very rude, disrespectful. Vegas jail is the worst. So it was a real bad experience on that Vegas trip. It was $1,500 to get out, and he bailed me out of jail. So I continued to talk to him. I don't know why, but I kind of made excuses because you're not that person when you're not drunk. I made excuses. So that's when I decided to move with him right after that. He said he was never going to do it again, like they always say. And that was one of many incidents like that occurred. And we stayed together, a year and a half, I think it was total, from December 2020 until July 2022. I actually found out that I was pregnant from the incident. We got into an argument about him being in his car listening to music, and he came in and loud and belligerent and calling me names. And after that, it was raining. It was raining outside. I said, if you're going to put your hands on me, everybody's going to see it this time. So I lifted up the window, and I kind of went a little crazy so that he wouldn't, I tried to put fear in his heart. Like, if I really act crazy right now, maybe he won't hit me, and that didn't happen. But definitely hit me. I started throwing things all over everywhere, and I left out, and I ran out down the stairs. He chased me down the stairs with the hammer in his hand. I had a pair of pliers in my hand. I had dropped the pliers before I even left out of the building. He came behind me with the hammer and swung it, hit me in my head. I dropped, of course, to the ground. It was pouring down raining, and then hit me before he took off. So he took off, and all of the neighbors ran out the doors like I was screaming. And one of my neighbors ran out the door, and he was asking me, am I okay? And I said, don't worry, help is on the way. He called a paramedic, and they came, took me to the hospital. That's when I refused to tell them, because they definitely called the cops, and the cops met me at the hospital, and they was asking me, and I said, I wasn't going to tell. I didn't tell him. And that was a couple of days before he was actually, maybe 2 weeks actually, before he left to go to jail. He went to jail on the 29th, and that happened on the 6th. But that 13th is when I found out that I was pregnant. They knew that he put his hands on me, but they knew that I wasn't going to tell from the whole hammer incident. Battered woman syndrome is what they called it. So he punched me continuously, and I put my hand up like this to block, and he just kept hitting. He was very violent. He was a very violent person. So yeah, there was a lot of incidents of different times that he put his hands on me. I've reached out to his friends and let them know and tried to get them to talk to him about not putting his hands on me. Nothing would work. His mom defended him every time. Nothing would work. And I never told any of my family or friends. So nobody knew what was going on. That next morning is when he told me he was going to the car wash. I said, okay, he went to a car wash, and I noticed in the refrigerator that I guess he fixed a cup and left so I'm like, how did he drink this much out of this bottle? There's no way they could have done that, because the day before he didn't drink. On that Sunday, he took so I was kind of scared, because I'm like, here it goes again. Here he goes again with the early in the morning. It's early. Why are you, I was on the phone with my cousin the whole entire day. And I was scared because every time he put his hand on me. And I asked him not to. So that day, the whole entire day, I kept saying, stop so much. We got into it about the baby. And I said, we're going to have a co-parent, because you're not going to stop drinking. You're not going to stop putting your hands on me. And I let him talk me into moving in that apartment, because it was a bigger apartment. It's 2-bedroom instead of that one that we were living in. The reason why I said I left out a major part is because you remember the cops were called for that hammer incident. When my cousin called the cops for this incident, they went to the other apartment. So they didn't even think that she had the right address. So it took them some time to get there, because they didn't know that I had moved. We were texting back and forth, and he ended up going to Applebee's, I guess, and cooling off after the argument. When he went to Applebee's, he did 2 more drinks. When he came back, he texted me, he said, let's go to Burlington. I said, okay. So I'm thinking that he was just going to, let everything that we had done argue about that day go, and we were just going to go to Burlington to go shopping. Well, that didn't happen, because he came back in and started arguing again. As he argued with me, I kept telling my cousin, he's and I'm scared. I was sitting on the couch, and he pulled a Phillips screwdriver out of his pocket and commenced to stab me. Only thing that I said to this guy, which is recorded, they have this, I gave the court this whole recording of it. It was audio. I said, I'm on the phone with my cousin. And he said, F your cousin. And he just started stabbing me. Before that, he said he wanted to see where his keys were at, because he was going to leave again. I took his keys because I felt like, okay, you don't have this OWI. This is why I'm here in the first place, to make sure you don't lose everything and self-destruct. But he didn't want to hear any of that. He wanted his keys, and he still wanted to leave, and he still wanted to leave while he was very, and he looked me in my eye, and he just pulled that screwdriver out of his pocket, and he just started stabbing me in my head. My head was first, and then it's my face, and then slammed me on the floor. This whole time, I really couldn't do much, because I was really big, pregnant, everywhere he could. In the corner of my eyes, inside my ear. Every morning I had to drain my ears every single morning. Waking up in the hospitals, couldn't hear out of my ear for a while. The back of my throat, I couldn't swallow. I was begging him to stop, and I just said, think about your mom. Just think about your mom, man. Please, just think about your mom. He's like, shut the F up. And I was still like begging him to stop, and just wouldn't. He's like, he's on today. And only thing I was thinking is like, please just let me see my daughter. I want to see my baby. He said, you don't deserve to be a mother. And he just kept, he just wouldn't stop until the cops kicked the door in. And he still was on top of me. And they just put the guns on him, and he stopped. My cousin called the cops, and also the neighbor. The neighbor is who got the cops there, because they thought that she didn't know the right address. So when the neighbors called, they knew this is the same incident, this is the same person. So yeah, they came. But it just took forever. And it was a total of 21 minutes and like 35 seconds. So I definitely have that still recorded. I didn't forget not one thing. My face was like really, really swollen. So they left me right there on the floor, and they took me out in a sheet. But it's not much you can do when you're pregnant. It's not much they could have done. But yeah, so I'm just a lot. The hospital, the first 3 days, I don't remember that, because they had me on a whole lot of. So when I got to the hospital, they took pictures, of course, and the cops came. They tried to talk to me. Well, I couldn't, talk at the time. Couldn't even swallow or couldn't do anything. So they had to come back on the 5th day. I think he came back on the 5th day. I didn't have my phone. My phone went dead She was on the phone the whole time until that 21 minutes was up, and it was stuck between my couch. So the cop went back to my apartment and got my phone and brought me my phone. Then I realized all of this was recorded. So then I told the detective that was investigating it, all of this is on the phone. So then I had to go to the police station, and they took the recording off my phone. Since it was so large, I couldn't send it through email. They managed to do it though. They managed to get the recording off my phone. At that moment, I was alone. I didn't have friends. I didn't have family. Nobody came to the hospital but like doctors and things like that, people like that. So I was there by myself for 10 days in the hospital. Not knowing if my baby was going to make it was the worst part of it all, because she was breached and they were feeling like they were going to lose her. And that's how they were saying at first. They were going to try their best, but she made it. Like I said, I was in the hospital for 10 days. They recommended me to go to the shelter, but since I just had moved in an apartment, I decided not to. When I went back to my apartment, it was a nightmare. It was everywhere. I had 6 pillows from the couch. They were soaked. Rug, I had to throw all of that stuff away. They were soaked. The rug was soaked. There was blood everywhere, splattered over the fireplace. So I had to clean up. Well, my cousin came up there, and my grandma was 75 at the time. She took her first flight. Her and my cousin came, and they helped me clean up. After that, it was just sitting home. I was just at home. My job secured my position, and they actually extended my short-term to long-term because he also worked there. So it was on the news everywhere, and they knew what happened. So they held my job for a long time, and I just decided not to go back. I just couldn't. I never had the strength to go back. So I was on. They told me to file unemployment. My job helped out a lot. They paid me. I was able to take care of my bills and stuff, just sitting at home and resting. And I got so depressed that I came back home to South Carolina, and then I went into labor pretty much early, trying to exercise. I tried to walk. So I was walking, and then my water broke. So I was in the hospital for another 3 weeks, waiting on my baby to come. Well, trying to hold her longer, trying to keep her longer. So I was on bed rest. Kind of stayed and made sure she was okay. I had her at 33 weeks in one day, and she came out 5 pounds, 2 ounces. Well, I have a friend that had her baby at 33 weeks in one day, same time. And he came out 2 pounds and something. It wasn't the worst thing for me to be on bed rest. It was probably a good thing. I was just depressed. Now I have to sit in this hospital bed for another almost 21 days. Those are a lot for me mentally. And at this point right now, I still haven't gotten counseling. So I probably need to do that. I need therapy. The only way that I can not cry about it is if I don't think about it while I'm talking about it. I can keep it together most of the time. I think that he's more upset from not completing it. I don't think the time bothered him. The time in prison, he got 40 years, but that doesn't bother him. What bothers him is that I survived. I'm about to turn 36 on the 28th of February, so I got like another month. I'll be 36. My baby is doing wonderful. She's walking now. She's trying to talk. I'm happy I survived for her. And now I'm just trying to see where life takes me next. I'm trying to start a business so I can be financially secured for both her and I. I recently moved back to South Carolina in December. I'm away, far, far away from him. And life has just, been a lot better not being. I'm a lot happier not going to sleep at night worrying about if somebody's going to touch me tomorrow or do any harm to me. I would just say nothing is ever going to change about it. If they did it one time, no matter how many times they apologize, they're going to do it again. So while you have an opportunity, leave the very first time. I wasn't strong enough to go through that trial setting. They convicted him pretty fast, so it wouldn't have been 3 days. It was only going to be a day and a half, but I couldn't do it. But I would recommend, if I could do it all over, I would. I would have gone. I just wasn't strong enough yet.